I had a literal put me in the hospital burnout. I was the one person doing every single thing. I was in charge of it all. I had a lot of things going on. I had dropped out of college, so I was really like trying so hard to overcompensate, I think, to show people that I could succeed. And then I completely redefined my understanding of success and what that looks like for me. And
Yeah.
that was the catalyst that was like, okay, something needs to change. And what are we going to do next?
Hey, you feel that? You are now tuned into You Feel That with Bryce the Third. Yo, and welcome to another episode of You Feel That with Bryce the Third, the number one emotional, mental, and spiritual empowerment podcast for creatives and entrepreneurs. Turning I can't do it into I got this, one episode at a time. I am, of course, your host, Bryce the Third, and today we have a very special guest, my friend Devyn Penney, self-development coach and author. And I'm actually do my job as the host and allow you to kind of give us more insight on what that means for you. What does what you identify as in your work, what does that mean to you?
Sure. First of all, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me. And I think that the best way to describe what I do is that the constant vision and the movement forward is always about impacting the lives of others for the better. And that has taken it's taken many different mediums on. So I write and publish books. I'm a self-development coach. I've got, solo development card games. I've got affirmation albums. The intention is always to help somebody's day, life, week, month, whatever they're going through, just a little bit better and to have a lasting impact. So I think that that's the best and easiest way to describe what I do. I'm very forward thinking, forward moving with my clients and in the books that I write and the podcasts that I record. So it's all about taking where you're at in your present moment and how we can move you forward in a way that is intentional and also, like I said, impactful.
Okay, yeah, and I'm pretty sure we have mad coaches, mad people who work with other people listening to this episode, and so I want to zoom back into the impactful statement and really dig into what you consider impact and how do you quantify impact. But before we do that, I want to zoom in on why coaching, why coaching for you.
Coaching was honestly was kind of a random thing that came up in life. I was very adamant that I wanted to be in business and be an entrepreneur from a very young age, and I did all of that. I bought and sold a clothing line. I was a website designer and developer, and I found that in all of my quests to help people, that I was just really trying so hard to get to a place where I felt like an expert in something so that I could go on to actually help people in this way. Because I'm young. And so a lot of people, when I was in my younger 20s, were telling me all the things that I could and couldn't do. And we were in 2012 was a different time than we're in now, right? We didn't have the same kind of resources, I don't feel like, for people who wanted to kind of do things on their own and people who had side hustles. That was just starting to become a word. We were not in the boss babe era yet. There was not really, there wasn't this opportunity that people were given to be young and be doing something that they loved and without abandon. So I always felt like I wanted to help people, and the primary focus that I had, whether it was in website design and development or in a clothing line or when I was styling, was to help people go from a place of having very little confidence to having the maximum amount of confidence they would need to live the life that they wanted to live or that they thought that they could live, and to really be able to operate at their fullest potential. So I had a life coach who was amazing for 8 years. And I, basically was saying to her one day, I was behind a computer 24 hours a day. I did 36 websites in 12 months. So it was just knocking things out one after the other. And I burned out and I was really exhausted because I was working so much, but B, I was not doing what I felt like I was meant to do, which is interacting with people, cultivating meaningful relationships, just having conversations that really change the world in a lot of ways. And she actually was the one who said to me, you could do what I do. Like, I've been working with you long enough and I see the potential in you, and you could do this. And at first I was, of course, like, I was 25 at the time. So I was like, no one's going to take me seriously. People have been, I dropped out of college. People laughed at me then. Like, it was just, I just really had major self-doubt. And at that point in time, like, as much as I didn't like it, I was most comfortable being behind the scenes. So I think that when she said that, I started to kind of get the thoughts brewing in my head a little bit. And then, there was a point in time where it was just, I don't know, a very clear moment that spoke to me in saying, like, you can do this. And so I did a 1.5 year long certification program. I got certified as a life coach, a speaker, a teacher. And I think that it just kind of, the ball started rolling after that. And it's been like 3.5 years now. And
Okay.
yeah, so it was, as much as it was completely random, it was also something that I felt like I had been in mental, spiritual, emotional preparation for a very long time.
Yeah, I was finna say, because like
Yeah.
I don't necessarily like the word random, and I don't really rock with the word luck, just
Yeah, no,
because I
definitely not
think
luck.
that everything that tends into our experience, like, is like we're having the experience that we're supposed to
Yeah.
have. So thinking about, and I think the thing that stuck out to me when you were just sharing your experience was the burnout. So how much do you think that your burnout played a role into you being open and receptive to change and to pursuing something new and different from what it was that you were pursuing before you got into coaching?
I had a literal put me in the hospital burnout. And so it was like major. And it was actually funny story, but a little bit of a sidebar. I was dating a guy at the time who was 12 years older than me. Like, I thought that this was kind of my person. And I remember calling him. It was like I woke up at like 6 o'clock in the morning. Something just didn't feel right. Like, my heart was beating out of my chest. I was sick all day, like physically ill. And I finally called him at like 6 o'clock that night, 12 hours later. I was like, you have to take me to the hospital. Like, I don't know what's wrong, but something's really wrong. And if you know me, like, I'm not an alarmist, especially when it comes to health things. And so it was a moment in time that was very like, something is bad. So I got to the hospital. Doctors did every single test possible. And the only thing that they could come back with was that, like, you are just mentally and physically exhausted. And yeah,
Whoa.
it was crazy. Like, nothing was wrong. Everything came back okay. Obviously, I was like dehydrated and I wasn't, feeling great, but they basically put me on like, a liquids IV for 4 hours and let me kind of just recoup in the hospital. But I remember the doctor saying to me, whatever you've been doing is not going to work moving forward. And so I was like, okay, cool. And in that moment in time, the guy that I was with was just like not who you would want to have in the hospital with you when you're going through something. And so in that week, I basically decided I'm not gonna, be working this way anymore. And we broke up like 3 days later. I was like, I had a major moment of like, okay, my world's just imploded. I have a lot of these moments actually, because this is just how I learn my lessons. But I really like, it was a major, it was burnout that I felt coming, but I never thought that I would be hospitalized for something like that, or that I would be, and I was young. I was 24 at the time.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, it was a freaky moment. And I had been working since I was 13, but really working on my businesses since I was like 18. And I was the one person doing every single thing. I was in charge of it all. I had a lot of things going on. I had dropped out of college, so I was really like trying so hard to overcompensate, I think, to show people that I could succeed. And then I completely redefined my understanding of success and what that looks like for me. And
Yeah.
that was the catalyst that was like, okay, something needs to change, and what are we going to do next?
Yeah, I think that's the big one too. The definition of success. So like
Yeah.
showing other people that I can succeed insinuates that there is a universal definition of
Yeah.
success. And there really isn't. Success is this ethereal thing that unless we have intention with the way that we move, it doesn't even mean anything. It's like this super empty word that until we do that deep dive into ourselves to see what is in alignment with what we want and how can we move in alignment with what it is that we've asked for, like success don't even mean nothing.
Right.
But I think culturally, like there's this blanket definition of success where you think, okay, a lot of money or a lot of people paying attention to you and a lot of eyes on what it is that you're doing. But success don't really mean anything inherently. So the thing that you're talking about burnout, and for me, within the past couple of years, I've had a couple of breakdowns, which could have been breakdowns had I not turned them into breakthroughs.
Yeah.
And it's just those moments of seeking understanding where the things that I'm doing are no longer working. They're no longer sufficient for what it is that my spirit is telling me that I need to do. And the point of You Feel That, the point of this show is to equip people and empower them emotionally, spiritually, and mentally to do these great things that we set out to do. Sometimes these tasks are so big that it can have such a toll on our emotional, mental, and spiritual wellness that we'll have those moments of like, yo, like the engine blew, like my engine blew.
Yeah.
How do I replace it? What do I put in there that allows for me to continue moving forward? Because otherwise, I'm not going to be able to continue moving forward. And that kind of moves me to like my next question for you, which is, you're a coach and I'm a coach now. I'm very selective about my clientele. I really rather not do one-on-one coaching. I do a lot more group coaching and do a lot more information products that allow for people to be autonomous in their own process and walk themselves through it. But I did do, I'm a certified peer recovery mentor, and I did do quite a bit of like peer recovery coaching. And one thing that I learned about that, specifically in the realm of like recovery from substance abuse and alcoholism, is that if I did not have a process to take care of myself, I'm burnt.
Yeah.
I'm burnt. Like every week it's like, oh shit, like this person is gone, or this person, I had such high hopes in them, or they were building their lives and now they disappeared. They stopped answering their phone. They, the money to cover these things, because that's a whole different realm than what I'm in now. Entrepreneurial versus like government funded and SAMHSA and trying to get all this assistance, and like the help you can get depends on what county you're from.
Right.
But I did like it was a big thing where if I didn't take care of myself, like I am not a good coach. So what are some things that you may encounter? Are there some instances that you encounter from the coaching that you do that you find that you're putting out more than you're putting in? And this part two of this question is, what are some self-care practices that you use that allow you to keep trucking and be the best coach that you can be for your clients?
Yeah.
Look, I know you was vibing and I hate to interrupt your flow. We're going to get right back to the episode in a second. But I interrupt the program for good reasoning. Look, if you are here listening to You Feel That, the absolute best emotional, mental, and spiritual empowerment podcast for creatives and entrepreneurs, chances are you're either being called to build something and are looking for where to start. You've already defined what it is that you're looking to build and are currently fleshing that out. And you're here looking for encouragement, motivation, and more context for yourself and your business to help you to continue to manifest. Or maybe you've been around the block a few times. You've taken something from ideation to creation. And you know in order to stay on top of your game and continue to win, you have to stay sharp. And you're here to make sure that you're perpetually the sharpest tool in the shed. So I got to thinking, what is one common problem that all three of these people share? Number one, knowing who we are. We don't know who we are. Even when you achieve something, even when you accomplish something, it can be hard to figure out who we are, because once we accomplish something, things change. Life continuously changes. And in those changes, we continuously change. We cannot stay the same or else we become obsolete. And look, I could just hear your ears perking up. You may not know who you are right now in this season of your life. And number two, where we're going. Whether this is your first time setting out on your entrepreneurial adventure or you're a veteran who spent the block a few times, the destination always changes, because when we get there, there's somewhere else to go. And then when we get there, there's somewhere else to go. So a process that allows for us to have a finger on the pulse of our internal compass, regardless of what the external circumstances are, is invaluable to our process of building anything great. All right, I hear your ears perking up again. You don't have a process. So look, you don't know who you are and you don't have no process. What if I told you I wrote a manual to help you discover these things within yourself? I hear those ears perking up again. The Handbook, a pocket guide for creating your desired reality and being a good human while you're at it, is available for purchase right now. Within this book, we dig into and develop a foundation within ourselves of perception, gratitude, understanding, completion, all of the timeless principles that will help you to discover your path for the first time or for the 12th time. This book will help you find yourself or remember who you are, as well as get clear on the pathway towards what it is you're looking to create. If this sounds like something you could benefit from, you need to go ahead and grab your copy. Head on over to brycethe3rd.com/the handbook. The link is conveniently located in the podcast description below wherever you're looking at or listening to this podcast. You can even go on Amazon and search on Amazon The Handbook by Bryce the Third and grab your copy. When I first got started on my entrepreneurial journey, I wish I had a handbook to help me discover who it is that I am and where it is that I'm going. And now you got one. Grab your copy of the handbook today and unlock the key to your clarity in business and in life. All right, back to the show.
Yeah, so great question. I mean, a lot of people, my friends especially, are always like, I could never do what you do. I have no idea how you listen to all of this and take it all on, and then are able to like live. Because a lot of it, like you just said, a lot of it's heavy. You know, I'm not talking to people about the fact that they, you know, tripped on the sidewalk earlier. I'm talking to people about real serious things that are going on in their life. And I think that part of, honestly, why I know that I'm in my gifting and in my calling is that it's practice, but I have a great sense of separation between my clients and I, in that I don't hold on to their stuff. I don't know exactly why that is. I know that I took a couple training courses on that I think helped, but I also think that for me, I'm very closely connected with my clients when we are conversing, but I have the ability to kind of leave it there. So, you know, I think that that's a big piece of it. And I think that self-care wise, you know, I used to be like obsessed with morning routines and this and that and all of these like biohacking practices and cold showers and, you know, lemon water in the morning. Now my routine changes all the time, but I find that the number one thing that I do to take care of myself is have alone time. Like, it's so crucial to me on every level to not only be alone, but to be in silence without any sort of external stimulation. It's where my meditative practice comes in. It's where my breathwork practice comes in. I find that I'm very good at kind of going into my shell when need be. And I find that I really, really need to spend time alone with my own thoughts and not working, to just really, like, again, recharge. It's the best way I can put it. But I think that my number one self-care practice is that I am not afraid to be alone for pretty decent periods of time when I need to be.
Yeah, we had an episode with a Stephanie Wallace, and she is a health coach as well. And she shared just this season of her life where she found solitude to be extremely impactful.
Yeah.
Because the voices that she was hearing when she was talking, she couldn't differentiate the voices from this mentor, this person, this, like, whose voice is this even?
Right.
So to have those moments where we sit back and contemplate who it is that we are and continue to cultivate our own distinct voice and what it is that we distinctly have to offer these circumstances, our clients, the people we work with, on a personal and interpersonal relationship level, just like our family and the circles that we contribute to. Like, those moments of solitude are mad important.
Yeah.
Are mad important.
Yeah, that's a big one for me, for sure. And I grew up in a big, loud, chaotic household. So now I like savor all of my alone time and quiet time. And it's something that I need in a major way.
Yeah. You got a lot of siblings?
I'm the oldest of 4, yeah.
Oldest of 4, so you're the oldest. Okay.
I know, that's a whole
All right, so
personality type in itself.
What is I finna say, like, so I get the oldest to oldest. I'm the oldest of what? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So my god brother, my 2 sisters, and my brother. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's always been this thing where it's like I've had to kind of seek the mentorship. I've had to kind of like seek the right way. I didn't really necessarily have like a reference point for how to like do anything or like lead anything. I had to kind of figure it out myself, and now I have the capacity to be able to. Okay, let me give you this game. I've been a daddy since I was 16,
Right.
and I think like recently, it's been very important for me within the past 9 years. When living intentionally, it's been very important to me to lead intentionally, to pass on what it is that I've learned, and of course, like this is something that is in the realm of coaching, as well as in the realm of teaching, as well as in the realm of parenthood, as well as in the realm of being a good brother, as well as in the realm of empowering my support group and empowering my peer group. So how has your experience of being the oldest sibling impacted your teaching style and your ability to show up for others?
I mean, being the oldest in general has impacted my entire life. And I just know that to be true. I feel like from the time that I was very young, I took on a serious responsibility role where I wanted to make sure that whatever I did meant that it was either going to make my siblings' lives better or easier. And I was very much like in high school, I was super strict about like, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to do any drugs, I'm not going to whatever, because I didn't want my siblings' reputations to be ruined by me, right? Like that was my thought process always. I'm a natural caretaker. Like even now my friends all call me mom. Like I am very much that person. So I think that there's a lot of that shows through in my coaching where I genuinely, and it's why I didn't want to be a therapist, because I think it's such a much more clinical role that you have to play, whereas as a coach and in my own practice I can kind of decide how I operate inside of my relationships with my clients. And I do feel like if you asked my clients, we have a very, I think, close relationship where I do find myself kind of in this role of like, I'm here to support you no matter what. Kind of parental, I'm here to support you no matter what. I'm here to objectively listen to you. I'm here to be your cheerleader. I do everything with my clients from have conversations that are deep and meaningful to most of my calls have some type of laughter, which is important, I think, and moments of kind of like, sometimes even when the world is just falling apart around you, like the last thing that you do is laugh because there's nothing else to really do. So sometimes, there's that. And then there are other times where like, if you are my client who buys a package with me, I offer unlimited texting services. So we text back and forth and people are like, okay, I need a script to say this to somebody, but I don't know how to say it, right? And I'm like writing and I'm like, literally just copy and paste this. So I find myself to be, I'm sure, I don't want to say that it's maternal because I'm not a mother and I don't want to use that in, comparison, but I definitely feel like I have a relationship with my clients that goes beyond just client and coach and goes into a much more connected relationship with each other. And that's how I like it, like I find, again, like I said, I can kind of separate at the end of the day. I'm not in bed thinking about all the things that I've heard all day. I'm with them and present when I'm with them. And then I also have the ability to kind of retract and be with me when I need to be with me. But yeah, I mean, I think it plays a huge role in my entire life, but in my coaching, I'm sure it comes out. Yeah.
Okay, so talking about your coaching
Yeah.
and some of your coaching techniques and coaching methods, I know there are people that listen to this show that are creatives. I know there are people that listen to this show that are entrepreneurs and maybe coaches. And I also know people that listen to this show that are just looking to improve the quality of their lives. So I want to circle back to the beginning of our conversation where we were talking about like making impact. So what have you found that has been the most impactful practices for people looking to better their lives and live a better quality of life? And how can people listening to this show apply that to their creative practices or their lives in general?
I think it is simply and also complexly that everybody has, in my coaching practice, has to have the realization that whatever you are thinking about, striving for, whatever your goals are, however you want to feel, already exists within you. And you and I talk about this a lot, where we're talking about being autonomous in the practice, right? I Every time a client thanks me, I really like forcibly say to them that you have to thank yourself as well, because you're the one who's showing up. You're the one who's putting the work in. You're the, like, I can be a guide for you. I can't change anybody's life by being, in their shoes and telling them what to do. That just doesn't work that way. So I think that the first and foremost greatest realization to have, whether you're a coach or a creative or just a person who wants to improve their lives, is to understand that every single thing that you have comes from within you, and that everything that you've ever thought about, desired, wanted, visualized is because it's attainable to you individually and specifically. And I think that that's a huge message that I carry over into my practice and really just into day-to-day life. Like, I think that it's really important, even from, when we were talking about being in solitude, just listening to your intuition, listening to that soul level voice. A lot of what I do is try to get people out of their ego and more in touch with their soul, because I think that that's where our authenticity lies. And I think that if you can kind of quiet the noise around you, that you will have more understanding and kind of compassion for this inner world that we all have inside of us.
So you think that we should lead with the internal experience
Yeah.
before the external experience? So more about our insides versus circumstantial. This is happening. I want this. I need this. More so like turning the mirror backwards and looking at ourselves.
I think that if you are going to be somebody who is solely dictated by external circumstances and the external world as a whole, it's going to feel like you are constantly coming up against tension and just difficulty, because the reality is that we cannot predict what goes on around us. We don't know what exactly is going to happen. We hear things all day, every day, especially in this age of so much media that is negative and that is draining. And the only thing that I believe that we have control over is how we react to those external circumstances and the external world. Again, like, I had a very humbling year this past year. Like, the external circumstances did absolutely affect me as a human being. So I'm not saying that, that's not a reality, but I also think that when I started to harness a lot of the strength that was within me and think about how I was reacting, because there are times where it's easy to react to negative external circumstances in a negative way and to be like, the victim. Like, I really had to overcome a lot of victim mentality in these last 2 years. And that sounds, maybe silly to the outside person, but we get ourselves playing these constant storylines in our head of, I'm this way, and so this is how things go for me. And to move beyond that and to get out of that ego place of being hurt and being, sad about whatever is going on, and into a place of being like, okay, I don't necessarily believe that like everything happens for a reason, because I think reason implies logic. And I don't think that we can make logical sense out of a lot of things that go on. But I think that everything happens with meaning. And if you can take that meaning and even just a small piece of it and apply it to your life as a whole, and internally kind of combat the external negativity with, again, like really knowing who you are and authentically reacting to external circumstances and situations, that we're just better off for doing that. So yeah, I think leading from the inside out. I mean, my first book is called Mastering the Art of Internal Intimacy, a 10-day guide to, living from the inside out. So I think that that's a big part of my practice for sure.
And so I kind of want to zoom in on the victim mentality, or like the becoming aware of our language and how our language may be a indication of some of the things that are going on inside, and the fact that it's a practice, and kind of zoom in on our conversation from yesterday when I called you yesterday. And there was these things that you were kind of sharing where it was like, this just doesn't work for me, or when I do this, like this just doesn't work for me. And we kind of drill down, and I'm like, because in my head I'll hear it like, because like if I heard myself say it, it would make me cringe, right? And we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
But it's like, so then I pointed it out to you, and then you switched the rhetoric to, no, I don't want this, and this is what I want. And
Right.
it's like, okay, well, that's cool. So now the power is in your hands, because there's two ways we can go about it. It's either, oh, this never works the way that I want it to, or this, or it's like, no, I actually don't want to put the energy into this, because this is not what I'm interested in. What I'm really interested in is this.
Right.
And then that sort of turns something from disempowering to empowering. Now, going back to like making me cringe if I say it, what's crazy is, like, we tend to notice those things in other people
For sure.
way easier than we'll notice them in myself or in ourselves. And so, like, it's a practice too, like, to continue to be open to constructive criticism and continue to pull out and cognitively diffuse in a way that allows for us to see the things within ourselves, but also to seek mentorship that we respect, that allows for us to get an objective view and opinion of the ways that we think. Because a lot of times our language can give us insight into what can change or what can grow, especially if we aren't surrounded by everything that we want to be in our lives at this point in time in our lives. Like, then there's something that we're not doing, which is fueled by something that we are not currently allowing ourselves to be, that is going on in this moment. So I think it's important to realize, too long didn't read version, it's a practice.
It's a practice.
It's a practice. And, here we talk about being intentional and having compassion for your process. And that's one of the biggest keys that I can ever put on the ground for anybody, is that when we journey along this path of creating an intentional life, whether you be a creative entrepreneur or just somebody just looking to be intentional about what it is that you're producing in your life, it's a practice. Who you were last year, who you were last month is going to change from who you are this year, who you are this month.
Right.
And to allow for that process change to take place, and allow for the lessons to be learned, and just being open and receptive to those lessons. I'm still like, I come from survival mode. And there's a lot of ways that I've massaged survival mentality out of my life. And then there's a few ways that it just popped up recently in the weirdest way possible. I was in a spa and I was getting this thing called a platza. And I'm getting this platza, and it's like this thing where you get these oak leaves, and it's a broom of oak leaves, and the person giving the platza is hitting you upside the back with it. And the person that was giving me the platza, like, I cared about her. I care about her. And she was like, you got to put the water on the coals, and every time you put the water on the coals, like, more heat comes, right? And so I was getting the platza, but then this thing had popped up, like damn, what if somebody trips because she putting too much water on the coals, and then I gotta get up and I gotta fight somebody, like, I'm naked, like, how I'm gonna do that? Like, and I'm in a spa, and these are the things that are coming to my mind. And the way that the plate to work is like, you get to a point to where it's like, I'm so hot that I can't take it anymore, and then you hang in there like 10 more minutes. Right. And I got to a point to where it's like, these things were coming out like an allergic reaction. It's like, oh, I don't want this anymore. There's nothing that I need to prepare. Like, there's nothing that I need to survive right now in this moment. I'm literally in this spa, getting a plate in this banya, and there's nothing but heat, and everybody is enjoying themselves. Like, why am I here in there?
Right.
So it's just allowing this process of these things to pop up, and when they pop up, not being like, well, I thought I healed from that, or I thought that I was better than that, or like, I've been doing this for years and this is some bullshit. Why am I still here? It's still survival mode. And just like, oh, like, here's some more. Here's some more.
Right.
Let's massage this. And then having that compassion for your process.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the hugest. I don't want to say hugest. It's one of the.
You said it. You can't.
I'm like, what was that? It's one of the most prominent conversations that I have with my clients. The difference between how our day goes, how our life goes, is how we judge the experiences that we have. And if you're going to judge an experience as good, or you're going to judge an experience as bad, you have to understand that you are going to feel in opposition with some part of your life. And so I think, like, a situation like that, where that comes up, if you judge that experience that you had as bad, it's going to be a bad experience. And it sounds so basic, But if we can get to a place of kind of neutrality in our healing process and understanding that these kinds of thoughts come and go because they need to come and go, and if we judge them, they stay much longer than they are meant to stay in our minds, in our bodies, in our hearts. You know, emotions are meant to last 90 seconds. It's one of the craziest stats and craziest things that I've ever heard. But emotions are meant to last 90 seconds. And it's the thought, the repeated continuous thought of that emotion that we have that keeps us in this place for sometimes years. You know, think about holding a grudge against someone, right? So
Whoa.
yeah,
You can't come on this podcast and drop something like emotions are supposed to
I
last
have
for night.
to.
Where is that? Explain more about that. What is that about?
Yeah, so when I was writing my first book, I was very much, let me back up. I grew up in a household where there was a lot of love, but that we weren't really allowed, quote unquote, to have other emotions. So I grew up feeling like everything had to just kind of be good all the time. And if it wasn't, then that either meant one of two things. Something was really wrong with you or you were ungrateful, right? So there was a lot of kind of like gratitude shaming in that, and no disrespect to anybody who helped raise me or anything like that. It just was, you know, we know this, but our parents are just products of their parents and their experiences and all these things. It's just a trickle down effect. But so I got to college when I was 18 years old, and I was completely depressed. Like, for the first time in my life, I was crying every single day. I hadn't cried in 7 years. I cried every day for a year. And I remember, first of all, I needed to get it all out, obviously. But it really got me thinking from then on about how we as human beings are meant to process emotions. And it was just something that I've always been fascinated by. But when I went to write my first book, I wanted to give people concrete understanding of what all of these kind of ideas that we talk about are. And one of the crazy facts that I came across was that emotions are meant to last 90 seconds. Like, we do not have one feeling that is not meant to go through our bodies for longer than 90 seconds. And it's the thought of these emotions and the feelings that we have around them and the judgments of them. Crying is bad, happiness is good, that keep us in this constant cyclical place of feeling these emotions for days, weeks, months, years sometimes. And it's very much something that I put into my day-to-day practice of when I'm feeling something that's maybe negative. I legitimately set a timer for 90 seconds and I go, okay, this is just so you know, even if you feel the residue from this, the residual from this, that was that feeling, and it's okay that you allow that feeling to move through you. What happens with feelings and emotions is that people think that if they just push them down far enough, that they'll dissipate. And that doesn't happen. They literally get clogged up in our body. They get right under the surface of our skin. I mean, it's why if you talk to a woman who gets a massage, right, and it's a deep tissue massage, anytime that there's any sort of, like pressure basically around your waist, right, so like top of your like lower back and whatever, it's so painful. And sometimes people cry because it's where our emotions are stored. So anything that we suppress, and after I had learned all these things about, emotional processing and all these things, I was really like not concerned about myself, but knowing how much I had suppressed for so many years made me really want to learn how to kind of release a lot of these stuck emotions and stuck feelings that I had had. And one of the practices that I came up with was that I was just going to time myself when I felt something coming up and really let myself feel it, like really feel it for those full 90 seconds, and then see how I felt afterwards. It almost became kind of like an experiment. Like, okay, do I really feel like that upset with that person after 90 seconds? Or can I let it go if I don't keep festering on it, right? So it's just kind of one of those crazy random things that not random, but crazy things that I stumbled across when I was doing research for my book. And that has just been a real like day-to-day practice for me.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely gonna dig deeper into
Yeah,
that
you should. I'll send you a couple
because
articles.
I'm combing through like my experience as you're sharing and kind of thinking like, is there evidence that this has validity in my experience? And because the whole reason for this podcast is because like I've always felt big feelings, big emotions, and I look around and I will feel out of place because I feel like nobody else was feeling how I was that I was feeling.
Hmm.
And so, you feel that like, dang, like I'm going through it. So what I've learned is that one, my experience is there's no rights or wrongs. Nobody has a
Totally.
monopoly on what's right. And I've learned that my experience is my experience. And so I have to have process that enable me to be empowered in my experience versus being debilitated.
Hmm.
So, I've learned how to build process over the years. And that's what we kind of here to share, to make sure that these resources and processes and tools that I've been able to develop and my friends have been able to develop are available to those looking to improve the quality of their
Hmm.
lives. And but I do know that I've had some experiences where some emotions then lasted a good half a year. But I'm wondering, like, if it's the thoughts, the ruminations that have perpetuated the emotions, or was it like the true emotions? And then on the flip side, and because I like to dig into stuff
Yeah.
like that, on the flip side, when there's very good emotions that I would like to continue to perpetuate, is that something that can continue, and is there practices that can allow for me to keep these emotions going? And I don't know. It's so much I
Yeah.
could dig into when it comes to that. And no, yeah, I think you got the gears turning in my head with that concept.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. And I think that, I try very consistently to reach a place where I appreciate all moments equally. So I really savor and enjoy the good ones, and I really feel the bad ones, because I think that that's what makes a full life. I don't know that we could only experience the good, quote unquote, or only experience the bad, quote unquote.
Yeah, I'm glad you're putting them in quotation marks because like I don't necessarily believe in good or
No, me
bad.
either.
Like
Me
I think I
either.
think I think it's all here to kind of serve us for real. Like every emotion is here to serve us, and really and truly,
Yeah.
it's just like and those who listen to the show frequently will know that I'm gonna pull this out like every other episode. It's similar to the pain that occurs when we put our hands on a stove. If we didn't have that pain that arrived when we put our hands on a stove, like our hands will burn off every time we touch something.
Hmm.
Like the pain allows for us to pivot in order to align with our wellness. And so even all the whole spectrum of emotions are here to serve us and are here to align us with what it is that we intend in our lives, with what it is that we want in our lives. Because if this thing was in alignment with what it is that I wanted, I wouldn't feel the ways that I feel if it's like I'm feeling repelled, or I'm feeling painful, or I'm feeling like those are the things that help align me with what it is that I've intended.
Yeah.
So I like emotions, like we can tend to look at these emotions like these are the good ones and I want more of them, and these are the bad ones and get rid of them and never feel them. But in all actuality, what I've learned, especially when you're talking about like polarity, like the good, quote unquote, like you did, emotions are really, they really paved the way for the bad emotions, and the bad emotions paved the way for the good
Right.
emotions. They're really all just one
Right.
experience, and that is the emotional experience of the human being. And I think this is what makes us different from, say, a squirrel. And I don't know, I've never been a squirrel. Maybe squirrels feel emotional and fear when they walk into the street, which I don't think they do, because otherwise, why would you keep walking into the street, squirrels? This is a diss song to the squirrels, right? But so yeah, no, it's the whole emotional experience. I think is what we're here to discuss, what we're here to put on the floor, especially like when it comes to entrepreneurship and creativity. I think there's so many spaces where we can go, and it's like, go do it and make it happen, and push through and woo woo, and you can do it, and you can do it if you believe in it. But there's not a lot of spaces that we come and talk about the emotional implications of putting ourselves out there continuously, over and over again, being open and transparent, developing, growing, turning into this from this, and that process of the caterpillar to the butterfly, and then helping other people to go from the caterpillar to the butterfly, and like the emotional implications behind it all. So this is definitely a needed conversation.
Yeah, and it's like, on that same token, I think that when you're talking about putting yourselves over it, putting yourselves out there, and going for it, and just moving through it, like, I have found in the last couple years, just a very real truth for me is that the reason why I've been able to continuously put myself out there is because I have this inherent desire to take risks and to also like be okay with failure, but also understanding that like the privilege that I have to take those risks is something that a lot of people don't. And when we're constantly like, I feel like this is a major point that's missing when it comes to self-development work. And when we're talking about, quit your job and go do this, it's like the implications of that for most people are extreme. And I think that there's a responsibility that I have moving forward to really explain that part of the reason that I believe that I inherently have this drive and that I inherently am pretty fearless just as a human. But I have never once thought that because I took X, Y, and Z risk and could potentially end up in this situation, that I wouldn't have a roof over my head, food on my table, right? That's a big, big piece of the puzzle. And I think that when we talk about moving through things in this way, and like you said, kind of this yay, rah, rah mentality of like, just go for it, to understand that going for it for a lot of people means something completely different and maybe has really detrimental consequences versus, okay, how can we make just the global consciousness aware that if we're all kind of in this together, then it's a much easier space to take risks, but we're not there, right? So like we have to be realistic about that, I think. And I think that, like I said, I think it's the responsible thing for me to do moving forward to really explain the difference between, yay, you can get up and do anything versus I got up and did a lot of things because I did not have a negative consequence looming. Were there times that I had blowback personally? 100%. But in the grand scheme of things, I think it's really, the more that I kind of tap into this thought, the more that I realize that a lot of people do not talk about it. And I think that it's a big piece of the puzzle.
We need you to talk about it. We need you to talk about it. Actually, that's like a whole nother. I might have to have you back on for real, and we delve into that for real because that's it's huge. So I don't want to be discouraging to somebody who may be in the midst of like, if I don't show up to work, then this don't get done. And y'all talking about like all these great things, but these things don't apply to me because like I'm not in the position because, and once again, this might have to be a whole nother podcast episode, but the illusion of security, like this thing that we tend to think is secure, like, oh, like I have this job and I'm locked in and, I can't lose this job. And like one day they could just say like, we're done.
Yeah.
Like one day they could say we're closing our doors and we're laying you off, and like security is not real for real. So like learning, especially if there's a divide between who it is that we see ourselves as being and what it is that we're doing, a lot of people will sacrifice their calling to be able to supply for their family. But what your family really need for real is for you to be who it is that you want to be on the inside. They need that example. They need that reference point. So even though you may be in a position where it's like, man, I'm just struggling to pay these bills, like I don't even know like where to start, it's still worth investigating how you can get started. But I definitely relate to like what you're sharing, Devyn, when it comes to like having that space to grow and develop, because they're the moments of stillness, the moments of like nothing's going on, and like I'm not going to die if I don't go and clock in at my McDonald's job or whatever it is, or if I don't go somewhere and do something or be with somebody or be somewhere, like things are gonna fall apart. Like I've had within the past 2 or 3 years, especially within the past year and a half, like I've had this support from my community that has allowed for me to like be at the crib and really like put my head to the grindstone and really think and have compassion for my process, but also have patience for my process, because I'm not ripping and running. Like it was a difference between where I am now and where I was when I was working at this assembly plant, and I had to be there, and we was working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and 10 twos, 10 fives, 10 and 11 hours a day, and I'm listening to these audiobooks and getting motivated, but I don't really have time to implement any of this shit that I'm feeling like I'm excited about. And well, I could have had time, but it was harder for me. I get off of work and I'm exhausted physically, which, translates into spiritually and
Yep.
mentally, and I'm not really taking care of myself. And it's like, well, what's the point of even doing any of this? And I'll just go clock back in, and it's like, 'cause I need this paycheck. And, that can be a harder cycle to break out of. But it's not impossible, y'all, and I don't want y'all to feel like, this is disempowering or anything like that. We just want to lay it out that this is something that's real, and I really appreciate you for pulling it out, Devyn. Before we get out of here, I have some questions for you from this card game called We Are Not Really Strangers.
Okay.
Those of
Yep.
you who have listened and watched this podcast, y'all know I had the episode where I played the game with my mom, and every now and then we'll bust them out just to kind of like, dig a little deeper. This is the healing edition. And so I have a couple of questions for you that I'm not going to pick randomly, because the last time I recorded by myself, I picked them out randomly, and it was like, I don't want to answer that right now. So I picked some out. You said nothing was off
Nothing's
limits.
off limits.
But
We can talk about anything.
I picked some out that I think will align with who it is you are, what it is that you have to offer, and what it is specifically that you specialize in. So, on a more we all could benefit from it level, and let's dig deeper into your mind and your spirit, and the way that you perceive the world. How do you define happiness, and get specific?
So funny. I just did a Q&A the other day on my Instagram, and someone asked me this question. And honestly, the best that I can come up with, and this can take on many different meanings, but my definition of happiness is when I get to do whatever I want, whenever I want, with whomever I want. To me, that is ultimate freedom, which translates into ultimate happiness. And I think that in my life, I have been very driven by this idea of, I want to just always do whatever I want, and not at the detriment of other people, and not in making other people's lives worse or anything like that, but just genuinely, it's something that I struggled with as a kid, because I was such a people pleaser that I never really got to do what I felt like was truly in my nature. And so I think happiness for me right now in this moment is to be able to have the freedom to be around the people that I want to be around selectively, and to be on my own timeline, and to quite literally do whatever I want.
Beautiful definition. Beautiful
Okay.
definition. Beautiful definition. I think I can relate. I can relate for sure. That freedom aspect of being able to show up how I need to. I think for me, I would answer that question right now in this very moment. Just aligning what it is that I feel called to do with what it is that I'm doing. As long as I'm actively in pursuit, or actively adding to the bucket of what it is that I feel that I'm called to do, like, I'm happy. I'm happy for real.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful answer.
Thank you.
So, let's see. Okay, now we'll get a little bit more personal. We got two more questions for you.
Okay.
So, what's been causing you unnecessary stress, and what would help alleviate that for you?
What's been causing me unnecessary stress? This is something that I've been working on I feel like frequently over the last couple years, but I think you and I have had this private conversation that I will now bring to the public. But I have always had kind of this money block, because I feel like I grew up in an environment where I had money that I didn't necessarily earn or deserve. And so for me as an adult, looking around in the world and being like, oh my God, that person's such a much better person than I am, and they deserve what I had, and why me? And like all of these different kinds of thoughts that I've had. So for me, there's a lot of stress around money always, not because it's not available to me, but because quite often feel like nothing that I can possibly do would mean that I would make any type of real money. So recently, I've been forcing myself to face this really, really head on. And, I'm always like, this sounds really silly, but it's unnecessary stress. I'm always afraid to check my bank account for no reason. Like, I just am always afraid to be like, where should I put this? What should I invest in? It's just, for me, unnecessary stress in that. And recently I've been doing a lot of exercises where I force myself to like sit down, look at every single cent, where it all is, what my money is going towards. It's something that I really genuinely like try very hard to avoid, but it causes me, in the avoidance of it, so much stress because I never know really what's going on. So I think that alleviating it for me right now means just really facing it head on in a way that's not that doesn't align with an old belief system that I have, right? And something that I'm trying to constantly overcome. So I think that was the first thing that popped into my head when you asked that question.
Nah. Thank you for sharing that. And I think this podcast is like twofold in benefit because we're having these conversations publicly. People can replay this episode as many times as they need to mine the gems that may be within our conversation. But also, like, it allows for me to pick my friends' brains for real. And like to hear you share that, it definitely makes me feel good, not in a way that it's like, okay, this is something that you struggle with, but good in a way where it's like, damn, I'm not the only one that struggles with this, you know. And in my life, like, that has been a huge aspect of my growth, development, and healing. And in that process, like, I've discovered so much how money is not about the paper.
Right.
Like, if the economy crashed right now and the world was relegated to trading chicken shit, like, the person who understood the energy of money would have the most chicken shit. Like, it's not, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's about worthiness. It's about scarcity. It's about what we believe is available to us. It's about value adding. It's so much deeper than the paper, and I think that, like, that deserves its own episode as well, because we so many people.
This is just our podcast now.
For sure. Like, so many people are in the grips of like figuring out how to make money abundant in their lives, but it has to start with our awareness of abundance, and how that reflects into the actions that we take to make money. Like, I was watching this, and I don't want to go on a tangent, but I was watching this movie last night called Profile with my sister, and it was about this woman who, like, went undercover and was trying to find people who were recruiting Muslim converts into ISIS, and like she went undercover and was talking to this guy, and like was putting herself in mad danger. And the motivation for the danger that she was putting herself in was that she was trying to get this story ran. She's a journalist, and the motivation behind running the story wasn't like this emotional, like, I have a heart for this work. It was, oh, this is how much they paying me, and it wasn't nothing but just to cover her rent, because her rent was gonna get shut off, and she was trying to move into this new career with her boyfriend, and he wanted her to pay like half of the rent, and like, she was doing all of these things that's gonna possibly get her killed for money. And I've done so much work on myself around like abundance, awareness, and money, that the movie just came off as unbelievable to me, because there's so much I would not do for the exchange of like paper currency, because I value my time, I value my life, I value my peace, I value so many things more than I value the paper, which allows for me to create abundance in my life. It's just, you know, it's a process, and continuing to show up for ourselves is very important, especially in this aspect.
No, it's a lot. And just even getting over like the guilt of spending money, and when you're an entrepreneur especially, and when you're someone who's running your own stuff, like we were just talking about, when do you outsource, when do you hire someone to do something for you, like, and really believing that you can actually do that. Like, it's a whole, but I think we don't talk about the money blocks enough in entrepreneurship and in self-development. Like, it's tough regardless of what side of the spectrum you came from.
And that's what I want to zoom in on too, because from what you shared with me, like, we come from opposite ends of the spectrum. You know, like, I come from like not having shit for real. Like, I didn't have shit for real, you know, and you come from like having the resources, and there's still struggles on either end of the spectrum that are specific to us. And I've had these experiences where people will look over on the other side and think that the grass is greener over there. But it's like, it's not about the other side of the hill. It's about what's going on internally. Because no matter where you come from, there are struggles that can have the ability to have a vice grip on you if you aren't aware of the internal process around these things.
Yeah, and you know, it's so funny. Like, I always think about this because I know so many people who have, you know, concerns about money or conversation around money that's unhealthy or just whatever, like you said, having people who just do anything possible for just the dollar. And I think what's interesting is that we all come from a place where, like you just said, it's hard to wrap our heads around this concept because it is a concept and it is man-made. So it's like when we're talking about things like money, it takes on a whole life of its own where we're all trying to just like wrap our heads around what it actually means because there's no real meaning behind it, right? So everybody's lens through which they see the world has to be their only understanding of what money actually is. Like, it's such an interesting thing, right? There's no universal truth around money. So I think that it's kind of why we encounter so many different conversations around, again, the good or the bad or this or that, whatever, regarding money, because it's something that no one really understands, on a very deep intrinsic level, right? It's not like we're born thinking about how am I going to make money, right? So it's just an interesting concept, and I will call it a concept, but it's an interesting concept for sure.
Yeah. There's definitely energy behind it, and we'll dig into that in
Yeah.
future episodes. You
Yeah.
feel that for sure, because that is something that I have mad experience coming from poverty mindset to abundance mindset and the practice which that is. All right, final
Okay.
question from the healing edition of We Are Not Really Strangers. What do you need right now more than anything?
It's a good question. I think that I need more than anything right now to build consciousness around my own health and wellness. It's something, we talked about my burnout earlier and all those things, and it has been years, and I have implemented so many practices that have, alleviated a lot of those feelings. But I do still find that at the end of the day, I kind of become the last priority, right? Even when I'm in my own home, oftentimes I'm hosting a lot of people and I'm out with friends, and I live in New York. So it's a very full life, and it can be pretty daunting to think about how to kind of control yourself in this environment. But I think that right now, what my sort of mind, body, soul is asking me to do, and I do think that this is coming with this exact age that I'm in, because I've not really ever felt this way before. But I do think that there are things that I would, if I could, I don't want to call it discipline, because it's not discipline, but I think that if I could build, like I said, consciousness around the way that I'm treating my body from an actual health and wellness perspective. I've done a lot of the mental health work and I'm comfortable with that. And now I think moving into kind of this more physical health world and realm is something that I need right now more than anything.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad you just had that conversation with yourself in public. And now it's
I
on
have
record.
this conversation with myself a lot.
Now it's on record. So when you hear this played
that was on
back
record.
so many
Yeah.
times, you remind yourself.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's been an absolute pleasure to have this conversation with you. I feel like this is an invaluable episode, and people will be able to mine so many gems out of what it is that we've covered today. Before we get out of here, one final question. Because there's a lot of people listening to this podcast just looking for ways to improve the quality of their lives. And there's a lot of people that are setting out to create things in their lives, but feel like, oh, it's such a big task, or I can't do it. What advice would you have? What suggestions would you give to somebody who's dealing with big emotions and doesn't feel like they can create the things that they're setting out to create? Somebody who doesn't feel empowered and doesn't feel like they have the capability to make happen what they want to make happen.
I think that the most invaluable lesson that I have learned is that we all have this inherent level of confidence, of love, of freedom, anything that we really want to attain within us. And the process is about stripping away everything that's told you that you can't have that or that you don't have that. I think knowing and acknowledging that it's inherent to you to be able to live the life that you want or that you dream of is a huge a huge step in the right direction. But I think that the way that we get there, and I'm going to circle back to the very beginning of the episode, is sitting with yourself and really taking away, like, I'm talking silence, stillness, listening to yourself and building up this voice that we all have within us, and then externally building up the self-trust that you're going to actually execute on what you want to execute on, right? So I do this exercise with my clients called the Daily 7. 7 things that if you were going to have the most successful day that you possibly could, that you would be doing. Could be huge, could be tiny. Most people are like, okay, I would walk for 10 minutes. I would have 8 glasses of water. I would have a glass of water. I would sit in silence for 60 seconds. I would walk my dog. Could be anything. 7 things that you would do to have the greatest day ever. And if you did all 7 of them, you would be the most successful version of yourself. If you did one of them, you would be one step closer. So I think that the reason why I have people do that is because there's a lot of conversation around how to move forward, right? What's the first step? And the first step is tiny. And so I think that just helping yourself align mind, body, soul by internally listening to what you actually need and then externally practicing that helps build this level of trust to make bigger decisions, right? So down the line, when you're saying, oh, I want to start a business, oh, I want to make this move, oh, I want to do this, you already know within you that you're going to do whatever you need to do in order to execute on that vision and get to, whatever result you would like to have. So I think that that's probably the biggest thing is that you have to go within and you have to understand what actually makes you tick, what you actually are feeling. And for some people, journaling helps that. For some people, just sitting in silence helps that. For some people, asking questions to yourself helps that. But then also going out into the world and actually starting the process on a very small level of, like I said, having a glass of water. Like it really can be that simple. And then the other thing I think that is really important, and I talk to all my clients about, and I say this constantly on Instagram, on all my socials, is that if you woke up every morning and asked yourself, if I love myself right now, what would I do? And then actually did that, your whole world would change.
Big tools. Big tools. Y'all heard it here first, man. So with big tools, sometimes we need instruction manuals from the creators or the users of these tools. And sometimes we need to tap in with the people who will introduce the tools to us. So how can the audience tap in with you and continue to stay tapped in with you post listening to this podcast episode?
So you can find me on any social media platforms. It's just at Devyn Penney, DEVYNPENNEY. My website is devynpenney.com. I have all information there. You can book a session with me. You can buy my books there. You can buy both of my books on Amazon. Again, just searching my name. And yeah, I think that that's it. I'm always available in my DMs on Instagram. I'm always available via email, devyn@devynpenney.com. So looking forward to.
We will link all of that information in the podcast notes wherever you're listening to or watching this podcast at. And I think we have like a special gift for the listeners of You Feel That, right? We got some discounts, something like that going on the website.
Yeah, if you enter Bryce 10 when you check out with any products on the website, so books, I have affirmation decals, I have card games for couples, solo card games, that's 10% off with the code Bryce10. And then if you want to book any services, 15% off with the code Bryce15 for all of your listeners.
Oh, you hear that? We love gifts here at You Feel That. So yeah, y'all go ahead and check out what she has to offer. She has a lot of cool stuff on her website, and I think she just went viral recently on TikTok with one of her books, and they've been impacting a lot of people in the sphere of personal development and spiritual development and intimacy with self. So yeah, go check out her stuff. And yeah, thank you once again for showing up to You Feel That. I think this will be a podcast for the books. Definitely one of the most legendary conversations I've had thus far. So if you could, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave in that little box just a couple few words that will catch the eyes of somebody looking to possibly listen to the podcast. Also, go to subscribe to the YouTube where you can see all of the video that I'll post. You know, we do shoot video for You Feel That. If you're just listening to the podcast, listening to the audio, the video is over there on my YouTube page. And y'all know I'm an artist, so I got a couple of visuals dropping this year for the album that's dropping this year. So that'll be the YouTube page for all that stuff. So go over there, subscribe to my YouTube page so you can get all the new stuff as it comes out. My book, The Handbook, a pocket guide for creating your desired reality and being a good human while you're at it, is available for purchase on the website right now, brycethe3rd.com. You can go over there and grab your copy of the book right now, or you can get it on Amazon if you choose to. Grab that. This will help you to take your life to where it is that you want to go. It'll help you to build the foundation of being intentional in your life. You know, that's what we talk about here at You Feel That. Share this podcast with 5 people you think could benefit from it. And as always, be intentional, love on each other, and have compassion for your process. We'll see you next time on You Feel That with Bryce the Third.